Good morning. I'm Karen Bosick with Eye on Sun Valley, and I'm standing in the Haley Arboretum. I bet a lot of you don't even know that we have an arboretum. It's right off Fox Acres Road near the Haley Airport. And I'm standing here today with Linda Reese, who is a member of the Haley Tree Committee and a former community arborist with the Forest Service. And she's going to tell us all about the Arboretum, which was established 25 years ago.
In 1996, after we received a grant from Idaho Department of Lands, which was specifically for urban forestry projects, we got a grant for about $5,000. So it's kind of amazing to me how far that money went. And then it was all established by, at the time I was working for the Forest Service doing urban and community forestry outreach. And we worked with different volunteers, but most notably Barge Levy, who was the director of Silver Creek Alternative School. And then his students came over from what is now the Senior Center and helped plant it. And then also we had some help from some 4-H'ers and some other schools. So the Arboretum is about 1/3 of an acre, not really big. The Blaine County Rec District, we're standing in the easement for the district. They got special permission to extend their easement from the regular trail easement. So it's basically 90 feet wide, 250 feet long. And our goal was to, as much as possible, plant natives from Idaho as well as other Intermountain states. There's at least 50 trees, shrubs, species here, in addition to forbs and grasses. We kind of went a different way than a lot of places that established a botanical garden. We worked with what was here. We didn't bring in soil. So that's why it still has kind of a rough look. And I kind of like the fact that we interplanted with naturally occurring sagebrush, rabbit brush, the grasses. And you know, it made it a real challenge too, because being in the railroad right-of-way, obviously there was probably some pretty mean chemicals that were put down along the right-of-way. And so there was still a little of that we had to deal with. But I think for the most part over time, it worked out. So today we're standing in front of one of the few representatives of our state tree, the Western White Pine, that is in Haley. There's only a few of these here. And the reason is it would normally be found in northern Idaho in pretty dense, dark forest. The other reason that we don't see it very often is, unfortunately, and I don't remember the year this happened, but there was a blight that was introduced to northern Idaho. And for the most part, the huge areas of these forests, these Western White Pine forests, were decimated by this blight. The trees can grow to a certain age and then they die. The only reason that we have this here today is that U of I at Moscow, they came up with a blight-resistant form. And so we actually have one of those trees that was planted 25 years ago, and it's still living. So you might wonder how you would know a Western White Pine. One thing that's really unique about them is the cone is really long. When I was in forestry school at Fort Collins, we had to remember all the scientific names. The scientific name is Pinus monticola. And so at that time, we were trying to remember how to figure that out. Usually the cones are longer than this. They can be 6, 8 inches long. And at the time we thought, how are we gonna remember it? It's like, that kind of sounds like Coca-Cola. So that was how we remembered that name. So that's one of the ways you can figure out this is a Western White Pine, is by the size of the cones. And the other way is they have very soft needles, and the needles are in clusters of 5. So there are other trees that have clusters of 5 needles together, but this is the most unique one, especially in this area. So this is one of my favorite flowers, and it happens to be the state flower. It's called Sarangia. That's its common name. But the scientific name is Philadelphus lewisii, named after Lewis of Lewis and Clark. This was a plant they saw on their journey across the country. But it's very confusing because some people hear Sarangia and they think, oh, it's a lilac, because Sarangia is the genus for lilac. So it's confusing, but very different plants. And there's another common name, which I think is really neat because it tells you how it smells. It's called mock orange. And it has a wonderful aroma when it blooms. And unlike some flowers on trees and shrubs, it blooms late. So here we are pushing the end of June and it's just coming out. So it's a pretty special plant, very hardy. You will even find it in the lava at craters of the moon. Somehow it manages to get its roots down and take up the water. So we hope you get to come see this while it's still blooming. So there's at least 2 different species of mountain mahogany. I believe there could be 3. We have 2 species in the Arboretum. One that you're used to seeing in the woods called the birch leaf mountain mahogany. It has a small leaf that it drops every fall. Really important for the wildlife. What's more unusual about the mountain mahoganies that are native to the state is the one behind me, the curly mountain mahogany. And its name is Cercocarpus ledifolius, scientific name. What's unusual about it is, unlike the other mountain mahogany, it's not considered deciduous. It's a hardwood that's basically evergreen. It will eventually lose its leaves, but it's got leaves that are long, leather-like, and retain water. So it's adapted to hot, dry areas. You can find it in some deep canyons in southern Idaho on some of the harshest sites. And then there's one other thing that both mahoganies have, and they have really crazy seeds. The bees love it when it blooms, usually the smaller bees. And then it creates a system to always have more mahoganies. It creates these long seeds, and when they dry, they're like a corkscrew. And so they'll fly with the wind, land in the ground, and it has a pointed end, which basically is able to move itself right into the ground and then have new babies. And all these little ones around me are not planted except by the tree. So here's another wonderful tree that we have in the Arboretum, the western larch. There's also a subalpine larch and an eastern larch. And one thing I think is really cool about the larch is it does lose its needles. People are always surprised. It's a conifer, but it loses its needles, so it's not an evergreen. One thing that's really cool about it also in the fall, before it loses its needles, they turn golden. And a lot of people also know its name as tamarack. You know, you've heard a lot of places named tamarack. So it's just another common name. And so again, having a scientific name really helps. So the other thing I wanted to point out as we've been going through here and looking at some of the signs that are at some of these plants, we have now about, I think it's 38 new signs. And we had written a grant with the Idaho Native Plant Society for these signs to replace some of the ones that had disappeared over 25 years and to add more information. We are standing in front of the Bristlecone Pine, Pinus aristata. It's actually not native to Idaho, but it's native to Utah, Colorado, and even parts of California, though there are 2 species. The reason that this is planted here is because it's such a durable tree. Even though it's often found at high elevations and it does well at high elevations, it actually has become a wonderful landscape tree, which is now available in the valley. So another really cool thing about bristlecone pine is they're one of the trees that is the very oldest in the country and probably in the world. So there are some trees that are up to 4,000 years old. There's some old ones, very old ones, just on the California-Nevada border. There's some very old ones in Colorado. And I said before that they're just very durable and they hang on.
Well, Linda, this is truly a hidden treasure in the middle of the Wood River Valley. I invite you to come down and see these trees for yourself and many, many more. It's the Haley Arboretum. It's located right at the bike path at Box Acres Road. I'm Karen Bosick with Eye on Sun Valley, here with Linda Reese. Until next time, I'm keeping my eye on Sun Valley for you.